Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 208 of How Do You Write? I'm Rachael Herron. Absolutely thrilled that you're here today because we are talking to C.J. Cooke, who wrote a book called The Nesting, which blew my damn mind. It is a really excellent representation of Gothic horror or Gothic thriller, really straddles the line there. And it scared me and it kept me up. And it, most of all, put me into a place where I usually am not, in the snow, in the cold. And it was really, really, really beautifully written and kept me on the edge of my seat. So I was so thrilled to talk to CJ about this. What happens sometimes, and you've heard me talk about this before, is that publishers will reach out to me and ask me to talk to some of their writers, and I will say yes to the ones that I'm interested in and no to the ones I am not. And I was interested in CJ, and I got the NetGalley version so I could read it on my Kindle. However, they also sent me a paperback. So I'm trying to divest of belongings as we get ready to move to New Zealand sometime in the next 6 months to a year. So I don't need copies of books. This one is uncracked. I'd never opened it, and I would love to give it to someone. So if you are interested in winning a copy of CJ's book, go to rachaelherron.com/win. rachaelherron.com/win. You can sign up for that if you're interested. And also, I have a large confession to make. Probably about a month ago, I also had an extra copy of Becca Syme's Dear Writer, You Need to Quit. That is a hugely popular episode of the show. Everybody loves listening to Becca Syme talk. The book is fantastic. You need it. And about a month ago, I said I had a copy and I would give it away to somebody in a drawing. For the last month, I will admit this to you, I have not been able to find the sheet on which I tallied the entries. I can't find it. Every single Thursday as I go to set up Friday's podcast, I look for it and I'm giving up. So I apologize to those of you who entered last time. Please enter again. Same place, rachaelherron.com/win. And that is a drawing for either CJ's nesting book or Becca's Dear Writer, You Need to Quit. And either of which, if you win it, I will be happy to send it to you, and I know you'll be happy to get it. So come over and enter for that. I would really love to send these out. International is okay. I'm willing to pay the money to ship a book to you. So please come over and enter. And what else is going on? Well, the big thing that's going on, of course, is National Novel Writing Month, which I am 5 days deep, and so far I'm behind, and that is okay. I did the first 3 days spot on. Even November 3rd, the day we were all glued to the news, and we're still glued to the news over here in America because, wow. Anyway, I actually wrote on that day because it was a Tuesday, and I had Rachel Says Write, where we gather together and write together. So I really, really needed that. We also have that this afternoon, and I'm using it. However, yesterday was our recovery day after the election, and I had given myself the entire day off, and I meant it, which is sometimes hard for me to do. So I did nothing. I played some poker online with no money, just playing on the game because I'm trying to learn Texas Hold'em. I'm very, very interested in poker right now because right now I am reading The Biggest Bluff, How I Learned to Pay Attention, Master Myself, and Win by Maria Konnikova. And it is so good. It's about a woman who decides to learn Texas Hold'em in order to write a stunt memoir in which she spends a year doing that and then enters the World Series of Poker. And I will not tell you how it goes. It's just really beautifully written. And I'm deeply into it in the way she looks at the way humans make decisions as she was writing this book. And I have gone on a tangent to tell you I played poker on November 4th instead of writing my words. And you know what? What I want to say to everyone right now is that is okay. It is always okay, no matter what your goal is. If your goal is to win NaNoWriMo and write 1,667 words a day, fantastic. Knowing your goal is huge. In my classes, I'm constantly talking about rejiggering our goals. You can look ahead See how many days you have to write until your specific goal, which could be anything. Tell yourself the number of words you have to write in a day in order to hit that. And if you don't hit it, rejigger. Rejigger. Move the date out. Move your numbers up. Those are the two things you can do. However, for NaNoWriMo, this is my decision this year, and I've never done it this way. In the past, I have let myself get very far behind in Nano, and then I get frustrated, and then I just kind of give up. And I write where and when I can, and I stop tracking my numbers. This is what I decided even before Nano started this year. On a day that I don't write, on a day that I don't get those 1667 words, I am not going to try to make them up. What instead I will do the next day is try to get 1667, and I will try to do that every day in the month of November. If I end up short on words, fantastic. I'll probably still end up with 40 or 45,000 words. And if I go over, fabulous. And I hit it and I win, great. No matter what, though, this will net me more words than giving up on day 10 when I'm 3 days behind, which happens so often with NaNoWriMo and which happens so often with our goals. The goal of goals is to set that goal and show up. What we don't want goals to do is start punishing us because we've gotten so far behind. When we get behind, we reset, we rejigger, we move the starting point again for us, and we move it again and again and again. And I have to tell you, when I'm on serious deadline, I rejigger almost every day for about the last month that I'm on deadline because I'm constantly either writing more than I thought or lots more often, fewer words than I thought. Rejiggering is the name of the game, and you get to do it in any way that you want, in any way that helps you best. So I hope that that helps to hear. I hope that some of you listening are participating in NaNoWriMo. You can always come friend me over at Rachael Herron over there. I think that's who I am. Either that or Yarn a Go-Go. I lost my account for a couple of years. Couldn't remember how to log in. So I made a new account. So I think Rachael Herron is the one I'm at right now. Okay, that's about it. Let's get into our awesome interview with CJ Cooke. I know you're going to adore her. Don't forget to come by and enter for a chance to win her book at rachaelherron.com/win. I'm all out of patron mini coach questions too. So if you are supporting me at the $5 a month or up level, please send me some questions. I'd love to do another mini episode. Those make me really, really happy. And you know what else makes me happy? Knowing that you're out there writing too, that we are doing this together and that we are struggling and failing and exulting and having a wonderful time sometimes. Remember that this is fun. Look for the joy inside your writing. And we will talk soon, my friends. Happy writing. Well, I could not be more pleased to welcome to the show today CJ Cooke. Hello, CJ.
Hi there. Thanks so much for having me.
I am absolutely thrilled. If anybody's watching most people listen to this as a podcast, but if anybody's watching on the YouTube, we get to see Ralph, the Cocker Spaniel, who is we had a Cocker Spaniel Dachshund mix for a while,
Ah,
and her face looked like his.
really?
So I'm already in love with him. Let me give you a
Oh,
little bio before we get started. CJ Cooke is an award-winning poet and novelist published in 23 languages. She teaches creative writing at the University of Glasgow, where she also researches the impact of motherhood on women's writing and creative writing interventions for mental health. So the creative writing interventions for mental health is so fascinating to me. And I am reading your book that by the time this podcast goes out, is called The Nesting. And it is truly, CJ, exactly what I wanted to read. It,
yay.
in this time of weirdness and strange things going on, I just keep going to scary things and not
Yeah.
scary pandemic things, but I want truly scary. And there was one night, a couple nights ago, um, I couldn't sleep after reading your book and I was fighting a headache and I turned on a meditation that I like to use. And in this meditation, he walks you through cities and then out into the country. And my brain kept getting confused. And I was in Norway and I was running from things. It was so beautiful. So I'm loving
Cool.
it. So thank you for that.
Oh, I'm so pleased. That's good to hear.
So this is a show about process. And you had an interesting process for this book. You actually got a grant to go to Norway, right?
Yeah, I did. I
What
hadn't
was
been
that like?
before. Oh, it was absolutely transformative. I recommend it highly. I feel like I can only ever write again if I'm on a boat sailing around the west coast of Norway. So, but no, I hadn't been to Norway before I wrote The Nesting. But when I was plotting the book and thinking about the particular tone I wanted for the story, because I knew it had to be a Gothic, which was a departure for me. But I have particular thoughts about the relationship between Gothic and despair, and I can talk about that. But I think that the Gothic is sort of the genre of the moment because it, really speaks to what we're going through. But
Yeah.
um, so I knew I needed a setting that was going to be, really sort of beautiful but hostile and not very human friendly, and that's particularly what Norway is. It's this place that is so gorgeous, but it doesn't look like a place, or it doesn't feel like a place that humans should be in. You feel like you're encroaching upon this terrain that is not for you, um, which I loved. So, but yeah, I decided that that was the spot for the book, and I applied to the Arts Council, and they were so wonderful because they gave me a grant, and that meant I could go. I went 4 times.
Oh, wow.
I know. Well, so I had to go to Oslo to chat with. I had to go to Oslo. No, I had to go to Oslo to chat with the co-director of the Office of Nordic Architecture, or the Nordic Office of Architecture, because the book involves architecture.
In a
It
very
involves,
deep way. Yeah.
yeah. So the sort of part of the story is that the reason it's set in Norway is that this architect he's from London, and he's building this high concept eco-friendly summer home in the wilds of Norway. And so I'm not an architect, and I mean I did do a lot of research into just general architecture, but in particular it's set in Norway, and I needed to know the kind of policies and what I couldn't make that stuff up, I had to get it right. So I went to speak to him in Oslo, and that was terrific, and he really gave me good guidance. But then I did feel like I just needed to be, I didn't know much about Norway, and I did know that it's a very progressive society, and that politically for me was very appealing for that thread in the book, the politics of the book. And I also wanted to see what climate change looks like in the Arctic, because I
Yeah.
had heard that it's most visible there, and you know, I have nothing to compare it to. It's not, but I did speak to, I went to this little fishing village at the very top of Norway, in Finnmark, beside the Russian border. And there's only like 60 people in this little fishing village. So I was chatting to them, and from those conversations, I was able to get much more insight into, it's stuff that you maybe can't find online. So it's just being there, experiencing the place, experiencing what it's like to, for there to be no sun. It was just dark all the time, and there was 2 hours in the day where it was slightly like dusk, but not sunny or anything like that. And I thought, how do people live? But they do, and they're happy. But it was just phenomenal. I love Norway, and I would move there. It's so good.
Well, I think that your knowledge and all of that study comes through, and it comes through in the exact perfect way for a writer to place it. It's never heavy-handed. It
Mm.
just feels like being there, and we're with both of these female characters. And it's it's pretty funny because this morning I was pulling up your bio so I could read it, and looking at the press materials that the publisher sent me, and I realized, oh my God, it's a Gothic, and that is how you have contemporized it. Is that a word? Yes. um, is that I am a huge fan of the Gothic. I was raised on Mary Stuart. I love A Woman on a Cliffside. And I hadn't put it together that it was so obviously a Gothic. You've
Yeah.
really recast it in this contemporary way.
Yeah, I think it was very, because I didn't have a necessarily light bulb moment where I had this story just there. It came in sort of little drips and drabs, and I knew the sort of things I wanted to write about, and I wanted to write a book that I would read, which is a good idea. But um, yeah, I was interested in the Gothic though. I get quite nerdy about form and genre and things like that. So I knew specifically this is going to be a Gothic. And as I said, I am interested in the relationship between the Gothic and despair. And I think that, the Gothic examines the unspeakable attributes of despair, and the ways that it's very surreal, or the way that reality kind of gets tipped upside down, and the the logical world and the rational world cease to exist, and the unknown is thrust to the forefront. So I just think that this kind of this state of despair when there's no solution, uh, then what is that? It's despair.
But you up the stakes even more by making our main character have mental health issues. Can you speak to that? Because that's
Yeah.
incredibly beautiful, where when she sees things that don't make sense, she cannot trust herself.
Yeah. So Lexi came sort of fully formed. It's funny because when I was planning this story, I kind of felt it was going to be this quite serious, scary story, obviously very sinister. And so I start writing it, and Lexi just comes and has this sort of humor. She's very funny
Yeah.
and witty,
Cheeky.
and yeah, and she's quirky and kind of just, I just thought she was phenomenal to write. I just thought she was just this really, really interesting character that I didn't have to sit down and, you know, do character interviews or anything like that. She was
Yeah.
just there. And so I just had this fun writing her. I mean, I think a lot of writing is going with what works. You experiment. If it seems right, you think, right, that works and I'll
Yeah.
keep that. And with Lexi, I hadn't plotted the story when I started. I'd an idea of some elements, and I wrote the first 3 or 4 chapters, which remain in the as they are in the book.
Oh, wow.
And then I went back and kind of plotted. I got index cards and everything, and I plotted from there. But I had to get a sense of who she was, and I do know from experience that if the voice of the book is not right, if it's just not working, then it doesn't matter what your plot looks like if you don't have the voice. But because the voice was working, but it was sort of just there.
Hmm.
So all the I think uh, because I hadn't sort of delved into her character and her history too deeply, when I was writing her, I was kind of curious. I was thinking, oh, and how can I investigate that more? So obviously, further along in the book, certain things are revealed about her past and her life. Um, but yeah, we begin when she's at rock bottom, and I'm not sure that was planned. It was just the way it came.
I I love that. And there are, and these are questions that are not on the list that I sent you, but because I am a writer and I am so fascinated with this, you played with voice and tense in this book in a nesting way. Like there are nested stories.
Yeah,
Um, Lexi is in first person past tense for the now section,
yeah,
and the past section, which is not very past, but it's in the present tense, omniscient. How
yeah.
did you make that decision? I mean, it's so curious. I've never, it's unique.
I think that was actually a conscious decision creatively. I think we all of us like to sort of push ourselves a wee bit and just challenge ourselves. And my natural inclination is to write in first person. That's
Yeah,
just what comes natural. I think all writers lean either way. You're naturally towards third person or you're naturally towards first. And mine is first person. And I've been really trying to write in third person. And I just think in terms of the reader, it's nice to have a bit of a change. It
it
is
really
nice to,
is.
yeah, it just keeps things in a rhythmic way. I don't mean changing all over the place, but to have a kind of consistent pattern, but there's a bit of alteration. And I do like third person as well because it can, go, it's like a floating camera, isn't it? It can go
Yeah.
places. And that, I suppose, on hindsight, was maybe necessary. But for me, the third person, the shift from first person to third person, I thought, I do enjoy writing Lexi, but I think maybe the reader will get fatigued if it's all through her perspective.
Yeah.
So we need a wee bit of a change. And I could also change the tone. So the narrator for the third person is just different.
Yeah.
And maybe I was trying to capture the world, how it looked through Tom and Aurelia's eyes, and they're quite different people and a different strata of society as well. So yeah, but it was a bit of a challenge.
I bet it was a fun challenge and very
It was
interesting
fun.
as a writer to read. I bet that I think readers don't think about these things very much. They go with the book. But as a writer, it's been fascinating. You're just such a beautiful writer. You really are.
Oh,
I'm just
thank you. Thank you
enjoying
very
it
much.
so much. Okay, so what is your biggest challenge when it comes to writing?
Oh gosh. I think it's, well, actually, I remember with this book, uh, so I wrote the last third of it when I was on that ship that I was on in Norway.
How
And actually
fun.
that I know, right? It was really literally, pardon the pun, pushing the boat out, because um because I'd never been away from my kids that long. I was gone for like 2 weeks.
Ooh, that's a long
And
time.
it was a long time. And so my youngest child is autistic, and I hadn't been able to go away at all.
Mm,
She's 8 now, so she's verbal now, and she can communicate with me on Skype. I mean, she still phoned me every day and demanded that I return home, but I just felt more comfortable leaving her
yeah.
now that she was able to communicate and let me know she was fine. But yeah, 2 weeks I was away, and I thought, right, I was off work. I didn't have the school run or all the stuff of normal life. I thought, I'm using this time, so I really just pushed myself to write um, the last third. And actually, you asked about the challenges of writing. I thought it's so good that I'm able to just be away and sit in my cabin at night and write, because mentally, I think that last third, where you're having to pull together all the narrative threads that you've set up at the beginning, because you can set up whatever you like at the beginning, but you have to follow through, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought, thank goodness I'm here, because it's not just the time, you need the mental space to pull all those threads together. So that is a challenge. And I have PhD students who are writing novels, and I tell them this all the time, that that last bit, pulling everything together, is so tough. So tough.
I just generally don't do it. Like
Yeah.
my first drafts are so bad that nothing is pulled together at the end. And I usually quit in despair and then go back and start revising because it's so hard. Yeah.
All right. I get it. Yeah.
So what is your biggest joy when it comes to writing?
Oh, well, when I think when you get a writing day, or just when you write something that surprises you. And I think that's why writing Lexi was so joyous,
Mm,
because she just seemed to come from a place that I had, I don't know, it was like maybe hearing someone talk or whatever, but it just seemed so beyond what I had planned. And she just seemed to just talk, and I just wrote, and that was terrific. If every book was like that, it would be great. But that was a joy, when you write something that is just like, oh yes, because you have this book in your head, and somehow that process, or the journey from head to screen or page, something gets lost,
yeah.
or it can get lost very very easily. And this is why writing's so hard. If you could just download it, then maybe that would be great. But
There's something
with
about Lexi that is just so joyous to be around. I talk to my students a lot about, creating that empathetic character. They don't have to be sympathetic, but we have to have some kind of empathy for this character to keep
Yeah.
going with them. You fall in love with Lexi on the very first page. You are
Oh, good.
100% in her camp from I
Hope
just,
so.
it would be a craft tip for people just to read your book on that. Speaking of craft tips, can you share a craft tip of any sort with us?
um Ticking clock. I teach my students this ticking clock technique. I think that sometimes tension is this abstract concept, um, and it's why we see blockbusters on the screen, that you can have any number of explosions, but you might not care.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I think if you've got a story, and you've got, you've thought about your characters, and you've thought about roughly what happens, and you're not sure why it seems like a quiet story, or it's not really, there's not sort of tension in there. I think if you introduce the ticking clock technique, then it's all good. And it doesn't have to be a timer on a bomb in a building that has 5 minutes to go. It can be, like, it can be any number of things. It can be just a tally of things, or just something that is reminding the reader of limited, or finite time or space, that a particular problem has to be resolved by, or there might be a crisis. So I think that's maybe something that it doesn't involve major structural tweaking, But if there's a piece of writing that you have that you think, it's maybe nothing's moving, just think about a way that you can decrease the time zone in there somehow, or the numbers in some way. If you can remind the reader that there's a finite kind of shape or space here that this story exists in, then I think that's good.
And that doesn't have to be relegated to one genre. It doesn't have to be thriller or horror.
Yeah,
It can be any genre that you up those stakes and
yeah,
tension by
yeah,
using that. Is
exactly.
something that
Yeah.
I forget all the time when I'm trying to create tension. What thing in your life affects your writing in a surprising way?
Hmm. Oh my gosh, it's going to sound so boring, but sleep.
No, that's not boring. That's like the focus of my life. Is trying
Yeah,
to
right. I know trying to get enough sleep is just like, it's endless, this mission. Because I just can't, I really envy people who say, "Oh, I had 4 hours sleep last night," and
Ugh,
they seem that they can string a sentence together. It's marvelous, and it's like a superpower that I don't have. But so when I get enough sleep, it's amazing. I just feel like I can think, and I can function, and I have clarity, and that is just wonderful. So yeah, I do think, and I actually find writing a novel is so draining. It is really a marathon for the brain. It is so taxing. And I do find more and more that, maybe it's certain stages of a novel, but I just need more sleep when I'm at a certain point, because I think I'm constantly just, even when I'm not at my desk or not at my computer, I am just processing and processing and thinking, and it's so tiring. So you do need to do that just as much as if you were training for a marathon, which
yeah,
someday I'm sure I will, but
yeah. I bet on the boat, and when you were pushing that last third out, I bet you slept like a baby because you
oh,
didn't
I
have
did.
kids. You are
Yes.
constantly surrounded by newness and you're working your ass off.
Yeah,
That
I
must have
did.
been wonderful
It was
sleep.
it was so good, and I also found it because it was so dark, like, I had no
Oh,
clue what was going on. You're sitting, it was fabulous. I mean, this was meant to be a ferry, but it was a ship. It's like not like a cruise ship, but it was definitely lovely. But yeah, to be sitting eating your breakfast or your lunch, and it's just midnight outside, is like, it's so, your body has to adjust to that. But I did, like, I was able to write until like 3 in the morning, and then sort of sleep into whatever.
oh,
And I am a night owl, which is not good with kids. And I wish I could convert to a lark,
yeah,
because 5:30 would be ideal, but I'm just not that person.
yeah.
So
I love
it was
that.
good to be able to sleep in.
Okay, so what is the best book that you have read recently? I would personally, and I do not say, my listeners know I do not say this for everybody. I personally would say your book.
Oh, so
I
lovely.
want
Thank you.
everybody to read The Nesting. So what about you though? What's the best book you've read recently?
Well, I've read quite a few good ones. There's a debut called "The Memory Wood" by Sam Lloyd, and I'm
Ooh,
not sure that that's I'm not sure if it's published in the States, but it's really good. But there's another one by Camilla Bruce, and she's a Norwegian author actually,
ooh.
called "You Let Me In." Oh my goodness, it blew me away.
What
I mean,
genre is it?
it's creepy
I'm in.
folk horror.
Ooh.
It's got weird fairy folk in it. And oh my gosh, yeah, it's a book I'm like begging people to read, but it is very weird.
Yeah.
Which is right up my street. It's not
Yeah.
up everyone's street, but
It
it's
was Camilla
fully up
Bruce. And what's the title again?
Camilla Bruce, You Let Me In.
Let me in.
It's kind of the title. I don't think it maybe alludes to the book being in a different genre, but it's a unique book, and I just love it. I thought it was phenomenal. So that was and it's a debut, but it just blew me away. It was just
Oh,
like
how fun. Oh, I
so
can't
weird.
wait to read that then
I
too.
know, I could read weird all day long. So yes,
That's what I want right now. So speaking of creepy and awesome, can you tell people maybe the premise of The Nesting and then where they can find you?
certainly. Um, yes. So The Nesting is a Gothic suspense, and it's set in Norway. It's about a nanny who, or a woman called Lexi, who uh, takes a job as a nanny under false pretenses. She's not a nanny, not trained at all, but she ends up being a nanny to these two little girls in a remote part of Norway, where she finds that there are spooky goings on, and the mother whose children she's taken care of doesn't appear to have committed suicide as everyone is telling her, but seems to have been murdered. And so she has to deal with this kind of threat that's posed. But there's a lot of folklore, there's a lot of ghostliness, and there's a lot of wildlife in this story. So I'm really hoping it appeals to people who want a really epic Halloween read with
It's
all of those different elements.
so good. And those little girls, Gaia and Coco, are wonderful. Oh,
Yeah.
I
I,
could praise
I
this book
love
all day long.
I loved writing them, and I loved writing the relationship between Gaia and Lexi in particular. I mean, I loved writing that relationship, and I thought, why couldn't I wish I could write a series of this, but I know that that's yeah, that
I
they
have
were
this
wonderful.
I have this theory, and I'm not sure if it's correct, but that sometimes we get a gift book. That's
Yeah.
there is no gift book. There's no book that is easy to write from beginning to end. That's impossible.
Yes,
But every once, like for me, it's like one in every 5 or 6 books is
I
something
agree.
that
I,
hits.
I agree. It is that ratio, and it's sad that that is the case
I
because
know every
some of
time I think, oh, I finally got it. Now I know how to write a book.
yeah,
And it's
you
not true.
I know, and there are some books it's like digging for coal. It's like I've literally lost the ability to write. I don't know what I've been doing all this time. Maybe I need to go and teach Pilates or something. But but this was definitely it was still hard in some ways, but but on hindsight, I had such joy writing it, and it is lovely when it comes out as a kind of that book you had in your head is sort of there, or it's even better than that. So
Yeah.
yeah, you asked where it's going to be sold. I think it's going to be in most Barnes and Nobles, and all the excellent indie stores support independence.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh, it's so good. And where can we find you online?
find me. So I'm on social media on Instagram. I'm CJ Cooke_author, and that's Cook with an E. And I've been posting some of the footage from Norway, like the videos and
Ooh.
photographs I took there on my Insta page. And Facebook, I have an author page, just CJ Cooke. I think it might be CJ Cooke Books. And then on or Twitter, I'm C Jess Cooke. That's my handle, CJESSCOOKE. And I have a website, cjcookeauthor.com. And the nesting has its own dedicated website where I
Hmm.
sort of posted a research blog, and that's thenestingbook.com.
Ooh, I'm gonna go check that out immediately. Maybe after I finish the book. I don't want to. I just want to get back to the book. I was so irritated that I couldn't finish it last night. But I
Oh
needed
no.
sleep, like we were talking about.
Well, exactly.
CJ, it has been such a treat to talk to you. I'm very sad that we can't see Ralph a little bit more. We've just, but I know that he's there.
He's
Thank
there.
you so much for being here and for writing such an amazing book that I am personally learning so much from and just
Oh, thank
enjoying the
you.
hell out of.
Oh,
Thank you.
that's good to hear. Thank you very much for having me. Have a great day.
You too.